This video is the sixth in a 10-part series on the Bitcoin Standard, a book by economist Saifedean Ammous. This series includes 10 videos, one for each chapter of the book, and this video focuses on the information contained within Chapter 6. Chapter 6: Capitalism's Information System. The cause of waves of unemployment is not capitalism, but governments denying enterprise the right to produce good money. Friedrich Hayek. Hayek was an Austrian economist, which means that he believed that the money supply should be limited. He wrote an influential paper called The Use of Knowledge in Society, in which he argued that managing an economy is not just about allocating resources and products, but about allocating them with knowledge that is not available to any one person or group. In a free market economy, prices are literally knowledge, and are the signals that communicate information. Each individual makes decisions based on the price of goods and raw materials they need to purchase. And these prices are a distillation of all market conditions into one actionable variable for that individual, which is the price. An example of how this works can be found in copper prices after an earthquake in Chile in 2010. The earthquake caused damage to the copper mines, resulting in a 6.2% increase in the price of copper. Anyone in the world who needed copper was affected by this without knowing anything about the earthquake. This immediately caused other copper producers around the world to produce more copper to take advantage of the higher prices, which in turn caused the prices of copper to fall because of the increased supply. Within a few days, prices of copper were back to normal. In this case, if copper prices were governed by a worldwide committee or a single person, how would they determine which consumers needed to limit their consumption of copper and by how much, when there are no real prices which reveal their preferences? It's not just that it's hard to manage an economy centrally, it's impossible. Capital market socialism. Mises argued that socialist systems cannot work because they lack a price mechanism to determine the most efficient allocation of resources. Without this system, it is impossible to produce new goods or coordinate the production of existing goods. Centralized decision-making leads to a breakdown in production. The division of labor is the separation of tasks in an economic system or organization so that participants may specialize. While most understand the importance of the price system to the division of labor, few get the crucial role it plays in capital accumulation and allocation. In his 1922 book, Socialism, Mises explained the quintessential reason why socialist systems must fail. Given that lack of application to one's job was usually punished with government murder or imprisonment, socialism arguably overcame the incentive problem successfully, regardless of how bloody the process was. After a century in which around 100 million people worldwide were murdered by socialist regimes, this punishment was clearly not theoretical, and the incentives to work were probably stronger than in a capitalist system. There must be more to socialist failure than just incentives, and Mises was the first to precisely explicate why socialism would fail even if it were to successfully overcome the incentive problem. The fatal flaw of socialism that Mises exposed was that without a price mechanism emerging on the free market, socialism would fail at economic calculation, most crucially in the allocation of capital goods. As discussed earlier, capital production involves progressively more sophisticated methods of production, which is increasingly impossible for a single person or committee to control. Business cycles and financial crises. In a free market, people decide to take out loans based on the interest rate and whether or not it is worth it to take the risk and cost to take out the loan. This determines the total amount of money loaned out in a free economy. Fractional reserve banking is a system in which only a fraction of bank deposits are backed by actual cash on hand and available for withdrawal. In a fractional reserve economy, the supply of loanable money is determined by a committee that is influenced or completely controlled by politicians, bankers, and sometimes military generals. These artificial price controls result in a shortage or surplus of whatever goods or capital that are being controlled, which causes large losses to the entire society because of overproduction or underproduction. This is the root cause of what is known as the business cycle, Business cycles, also known as boom and bust cycles, are intervals of expansion followed by recession in economic activity. Recessions are caused by the manipulation of interest rates by central banks. This manipulation distorts the price signals that capitalists rely on to make decisions, leading to misallocation of resources and eventually to a recession. Whenever a government starts inflating the money supply, there are negative consequences. If the central bank stops the inflation, interest rates rise, and a recession follows, as many of the projects that were started are exposed as unprofitable and have to be abandoned, exposing the misallocation of resources and capital that took place. If the central bank were to continue its inflationary process indefinitely, it would just increase the scale of misallocations in the economy, wasting even more capital and making the inevitable recession even more painful. Central bank planning of the money supply is neither desirable nor possible. Sound basis for trade. The abandonment of the gold standard in 1914, through the suspension and limitation of exchanging paper money for gold by most governments, began the period called monetary nationalism. Money's value stopped being a fixed unit of gold, which was the commodity with the highest stock-to-flow ratio, which kept its value predictable and relatively constant. Instead, the value of money oscillated along with the vagaries of monetary and fiscal policy, as well as international trade. Imagine the sort of confusion that would happen to all engineering projects if the length of the meter were to oscillate daily with the pronouncements of a central measurements office. Making the meters shorter might make someone's house whose area is 200 square meters believe it's actually 400 square meters, but it would still be the same house. The redefinition of the meter would make an engineer's ability to properly build a house impossible. Similarly, devaluing a currency may make a country richer nominally or increase the nominal value of its exports, but it does nothing to make the country more prosperous. In a free market for money, individuals would choose the currencies they want to use, and the result would be that they would choose the currency with reliably the highest stock-to-flow ratio. The money that came closest to this was gold in the latter years of the international gold standard. Because a devalued currency makes exports cheaper, any country facing economic slowdown can boost its GDP and employment by devaluing its currency and increasing its exports. This brings us to the current state of affairs in the global economy, where most governments attempt to devalue their currencies in order to boost their exports, and all complain about one another's unfair manipulation of their currencies. None of this would be necessary if only the world were to be based on a sound global monetary system that serves as a global unit of account and measurement of value, allowing producers and consumers worldwide to have an accurate assessment of their costs and revenues, separating economic profitability from government policy. Hard money. By taking the problem of supply out of the hands of governments and their economists and propagandists, would force everyone to be productive to society instead of seeking to get rich through the fool's errand of monetary manipulation. Be sure to watch the next video in this 10-part series, which will summarize Chapter 7 of the Bitcoin Standard. Chapter 7 is entitled Sound Money and Individual Freedom, and it explains how sound money incentivizes freedom and fiat money incentivizes war and government control over individuals. Please like, subscribe, and check out the next video.